Hi guys, I'm John Ferric Domingo from BS Mar 3A. Today, I'm gonna discuss to you about the Marpol Annex 5 and Marpol Annex 6. Marpol Annex 5, Prevention of Pollution by Garbage from Ships, which entered into force on 31st December 1988. So, I have divided this annex into 8 sections. First, what is garbage? Second, objective of Annex 5. Third, application for special areas. Fifth, classes of garbage on ship. Seventh, discharge criteria. And the eighth, the garbage management plan, which includes the garbage record book. So, before we start, let's see how long does it takes for the garbage to decompose for a train ticket. It was 2 weeks for orange peel. It takes 6 months for a milk carton. It takes 5 years for tin can. It takes 50 years for a battery. It takes 100 years, and the last, for a plastic bottle, it can take more than 450 years. So now, you can understand the severeness of this annex. So let's see what is garbage. Garbage includes all kinds of food, domestic, and operational waste, all plastic cargo, residues, incinerated ashes, cooking, or fishing gear, and animal carcasses generated during the normal operation of the ship and liable to be disposed or continuously or periodically. Garbage does not include fresh fish or part thereof generated as a result of fishing activities undertaken during the voyage or as a result of aquaculture activities. So now let's see what are the objectives of Annex 5 and the application. So the objective for Annex 5 is to seek to eliminate and reduce the amount of garbage being discharged into the sea from the ships. And the application is Annex 5 implies to all ship, which means all ship of any type whatsoever operating in the marine environment, from merchant ships to fixed or floating platforms to non-commercial ships like places, craft, and yachts. So now let's see what are the special areas under the Annex 5. The Mediterranean Sea, the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, the Red Sea, the Gulf areas, the North Sea, the wider Caribbean region, and the Arctic area. Let's have a quick look of classes of garbage on ship garbage on board. Ships are classified into various categories in order to facilitate easy handling and disposing of their plastic, floating, damaged linen, and packing materials, grounded down paper products, rugs, glass, metal, bottles, and crockeries, domestic waste, incinerated ashes, normal, paper products, rugs, oil rugs, glass and metal scraps operation, waste animal cars, cases on board, livestock carriers, e-waste, cooking or waste produced in the galley, cargo's residues on board, a ship carrying solid cargo in a bulk which are not harmful to the marine environment, cargo residues on board, a ship carrying solid cargoes in bulk which are harmful to the marine environment. So now let's see what are the discharge criteria of our mentioned waste. Here you can see 4 columns, which one is for the garbage, second one is outside of special areas, third is within special areas, and the fourth is offshore platform for the food waste commuted or grounded outside of special areas. It can be discharged, but it should be more than 3 nautical miles away, and within the special area it can be discharged but more than 12 nautical miles from the land. And for the offshore discharge is permitted for the food waste not committed or grounded when outside of the special areas. It must be 12 nautical miles away from the nearest land, and within the special area discharge is prohibited. And for the offshore it is also prohibited. For the cargo residue is not contained in wash water, it must be discharged 12 nautical miles away from the nearest land when outside of the special areas, and within the special areas the discharge is prohibited, and for the offshore it is prohibited. Cargo residues contained in wash water, it can also be discharged but more than 12 nautical miles away from the nearest land when outside of the special areas and within the special area, it can be discharged following this cleaning agent and additional additives contained in the cargo. Hove wash discharge is permitted outside of the special area, and following these norms within the special area, cleaning agent and additives in the deck and external surface wash water discharge is permitted outside of the special area. Discharge is also permitted with the special area, and for the offshore, it is not permitted. Animals carcasses when discharged outside of the special area must be en route and as far as from the nearest land as possible, should be more than 100 nautical miles and maximum water depth, and within the special area are it's prohibited, and for the offshore it is prohibited. And here is the important one of the other garbage, including plastic, synthetic grooves, fishing gear, plastic bag, and other materials outside or inside of the special area, it is prohibited to discharge. The garbage must be given to the show facilities. Now let's see what is garbage management plan. A garbage management plan details procedure for collecting, processing, and stowing and disposing of the garbage on board a ship. The plan also mentioned a designated person who is in charge of carrying out the plan. This plan is applicable to the ship more than 100 GT or certified to carry 15 or more person and fixed and floating platform. Training must be given to the ship staff for proper garbage disposal on board and for knowledge and garbage disposal regulation at sea and in special areas. So now let's have a take look what is garbage record book. The garbage record book consists of all entries that are to be made while disposing or discharging garbage. All ships which are more than 400 GRT are certified to carry more than 15 and fixed and floating platform must carry a garbage record book. The ship under the Appendix 2 of Marpol Annex 5 now needs to carry 2 garbage record book. So the part 1 is for all the garbage other than cargo residues applicable to all ships, and part 2 for the cargo residues only applicable to the ships carrying solid bulk cargoes. In the garbage record book, the incinerator operating time, that is start and stop time, date, and positioning of the ship need to be recorded. Also, a column is provided with records the exceptional discharge or losing of garbage under Regulation 7. The part 2 of the garbage record book used on board carrying solid bulk cargoes is provided with a column for an entry of the cargo residues produced on board along the position of the ship, in name of the port, categories of the cargo residues, and amount discharged to the sea or reception facilities, including the start and the stop positioning for the sea discharge. When the cargo residues is transferred to the port reception facilities, the receive from them need to be kept on board as an inspection record for at least 2 years. Now, let's see what all entries are to be made in the garbage record group. When garbage is discharged into the sea, reception facilities or other vessels. When garbage is incinerated, accidental or other exceptional discharge of garbage along with the time of occurrence, port or position of the vessel at the time of occurrence, category of the garbage, and estimation of the amount in meter cube, and the reason of the disposal and remarks. So with this, guys, we are done with this Annex 5. I hope you understand and watch my explanation about Marpol Annex 5. We will cover about the Marpol Annex 6, that is prevention of air pollution from ships, which entered into force on 90th May of 2005. I have divided this annex into 5 sections. First will be the NOx, second the SOx, Third, the greenhouse gases. Fourth, other provisions that includes ocean depleting substance. And the fifth, the spatial areas. So let's start without further delay. Marpol Annex 6 aims progressive reduction globally in emission of SOx, NOx, and particulate matter, and the introduction of emission control area, that is the ECA, to reduce emission of those air pollutants further in designated sea areas. So before we move ahead, let's have a take look what are the effects of air pollution. Air pollution causes acid rain, human health concerns, ocean depletion, and global warming. I will have not to waste your time explaining this to you. You must be aware about it. I have tried to put a graph to show you that shipping is still the less polluting mode of transportation. Here is how distance 1 ton of cargo can travel 1 liter of fuel in Canada, Great Lake, and St. Lawrence Seaway. By truck, 1 ton of cargo by 1 liter of fuel can travel only 49 kilometers, whereas the train can travel 226 kilometers, and by ship you can transport that 394 kilometers. So you can see how less polluting our ship is, but still there are regulations to be followed. Marpol Annex 6 divides pollutants into several categories. Let us discuss about them. So the first is NOx, the nitrogenous pollutants. The NOx emission limits of Resolution 13 of Marpol Annex 6 applies to every marine diesel engine with a power output of more than 130 kW installed on a ship. A marine diesel engine is defined as a reciprocating internal combustion engine operating on liquid or dual fuel. There are 2 exemptions: engine used solely for the emergencies and the engine on the ship operating solely within the water of the state in which they are flagged. The latter exemptions only applies if their engines are subject to an alternative NOx control measure. The Marpol Annex 6 NOx emission limits are categorized into 3 tiers: Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So let's discuss what are these. NOx emission limits are set for diesel engine depending on the engine maximum operating speed, that is the RPM. Tier 1 and Tier 2 limits are global, while the Tier 3 standards apply only in the NOx emission control area. So let's have a take look in the table. This N stands for the RPM of the engine, and all the data given here are in grams per kilowatt hours. Tier 1 starts from 2000. If the engine RPM was less than 130, then the emission allowed was 17 grams per kilowatt hour. If the engine RPM was between 130 and 2000, then there is a formula given over here, and if the engine RPM was more than 2000, then the standard emission was 9.8 gram per kilowatt hour. Tier 2. From 2011, if the engine RPM was less than 130, then the emission standard were 14.4 grams per kilowatt hour. And if between 130 and 2000, then here is the formula, and if more than 2000, then the emission standard is 7.7 grams per kilowatt hour. Tier 3. Start from 2016. If the engine RPM is less than 130, then the emission standards were 3.4 grams per kilowatt hour. If between 130 and 2000, the dimensional standard is calculated with the help of this formula. And if more than 2000, then it is 1.96. You can see there is strategic fall in the allowed limits. Now, let's see how vessel complies with Tier 2 and Tier 3 categories. Tier 2. Standards are expected to be made by combustion process optimization. The parameters explained by engine manufacturer includes fuel injection, timing, pressure, and rate, fuel launcher, flows, areas, exhaust valve, timing, and cylinder compression volumes. Tier 3 standards are expected to be required. Dedicated NOx emission control technologies such as various forms of water introduction into the combustion process, exhaust gas recirculation, and selective catalyst reduction. Now, let's see the category next, SOx. That is the sulfur content pollutants. Annex 6 regulations include caps on sulfur content of fuel oil as a measure to control SOx emission and indirect particulate matter emission. Special fuel quality provision exists for SOx emission control area, that is the SECA. Let's have a look in this table to understand how sulfur limit has changed in the frequent years. In the year 2000, the sulfur limit in the SECA area were 1.5% mass by mass, and in the global, it was 4.5% mass by mass. Between the year 2010 and 2012, it was 1% in the SECA area mass by mass and 3.5 mass by mass in global region. In 2015, it was 0.1% in the SECA area and 3.5 in the global region, and further in 2020, it was reduced to 0.5% mass by mass for global region. It is also known as Sulfur Cap 2020, which entered into force on 1st of January 2020. For the vessel to comply with the sulfur limit, she cannot carry for a heavy fuel oil which meets the applicable sulfur limit. Alternative measures are also allowed to reduce sulfur emissions, such as the use of exhaust gas cleaning system, aka discovers. For example, in use of using 0.5 sulfur fuel, 220 ship can fit an exhaust gas cleaning system, or use any other technologies method to limit SOx emission to not exceeding 6 grams per kilowatt hour. Now, let's see another category, greenhouse gases. In April 2018, the IMO adopted an initial strategy on the reduction of greenhouse gas emission from ships with a target to reduce the total annual greenhouse emission by at least 50% by 2050 compared to 2008. This strategy, called the Strengthening the EEDI, that is the Energy Efficiency Design Index requirements, and number of other measures to reduce emission, such as operation efficiency measures, further speed reduction measures to address CH4 and volatile organic compound emission, alternative low carbon and zero carbon fuels, as well as market-based measures. Let's see what Marpol has to say about greenhouse gases. Marpol Annex 6 Chapter 4 introduced two mandatory mechanisms intended to ensure an energy efficient standard for ships: the Energy Efficiency Design Index, that is the EEDI, for new ships, and the Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan, that is SSEMP, for all ships. The EEDI is the performance-based mechanism that requires a certain minimum energy efficiency in new ships. Design and build are free to choose a technology to satisfy the EEDI requirements in a specific ship design. The SEEMP established a mechanism for operate to improve the energy efficiency of the ship. The regulation applies to all the ship 400 gross tonnage and above, and entered into the force from the 1st of January 2013. Now, let's see the another category, that is the ozone depleting substance. Annex 6 prohibits deliberate emission of ozone depleting substance, which includes halogens and chlorofluorocarbon. New installation containing ozone depleting substance are prohibited on all ships, but new installation containing the hydrochlorofluorocarbon are permitted until 1st of January 2020. The Annex 6 also prohibits the incineration on board the ship of certain products such as contaminated packaging materials and polychlorinated biphenyls. Now, let's have a look on the special areas of Annex 6, that is also known as emission control areas, to set of emission control, and fuel quality requirements are defined by Annex 6. That is, the global requirements and the more stringent requirements applicable to the ship in the emission control area, that is the ECA. The emission control area can be designed for SOx and particulate matter or NOx, or all three types of emission from ship, subject to a proposal from the party to the Annex 6. Existing emission control area includes the Baltic Sea for SOx. It was adopted in 1997, which entered into the force in 2005. And for NOx, it was adopted in 2016, which entered into the force on 2021. Second is the North Sea. Third is the North American Emission Control Area, including most of the US and Canadian coast. Fourth is the US Caribbean Emission Control Area, including Puerto Rico and US Virgin Island. So this is my explanation about the Marpol Annex 5 and Marpol Annex 6. Once again, I'm John Ferric Domingo from BS Mar E3A. Thank you for watching.